opening bots and stuff. Okay, we are live.
Good point. Yeah.
Yes. So, welcome to Defn, episode number 46, with me, Vijay. That's narcissistic. I think I should start with the guest first. With Roman Liutikov.
Yeah, that was the right one.
So
I struggled a little bit, but yeah, that was pretty good.
I would say Dobro Otro or Dobro. Dobro Večer maybe.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. So welcome to the episode. Hello, Ray.
Yeah, hi, here as well from windy Belgium. It's very windy today.
Yeah.
Where are you, Roman? Which country are you in?
Here, Ukraine.
In the Ukraine. Okay.
It's finally warm here. The snow.
I think there's some elections or something going on, right? I just saw something on BBC, some discussions about Ukrainian leadership or elections or something like that.
Yeah, I guess it should be in March.
Yeah. Cool.
So we have very, very strong campaign going on everywhere.
Well, you've had a complicated couple of years, haven't you? Let's say.
Yeah.
So
maybe you don't want to get too into that though, because
yeah, of course. Welcome to Ukrainian Politics Podcast, episode 1.
One of the things I did see in the news over the weekend, though, was I don't know if I think it's Russia more than Ukraine actually. Was this there's a river or a lake or whatever between two straits that becomes frozen, and cars drive over it. Cars drive over the ice, and I was absolutely astonished, that these cars were, and the people, the local people, the local supervisory administrative people, make sure it's all good, I guess.
So it is part of the highway or something, not highway, but it's part of the regular road or something.
No. It's just the strait between the two parts of Russia open freeze.
Yeah.
Sometimes, really, the ice gets very thick, so they can actually drive a car over it.
Wow.
And these fuckers do it, So you've got to have balls to do that, don't you?
But that's I was in Budapest a couple of weeks ago, and the history was pretty much similar because in winter the river Danube, they walk on that one because they don't have any bridges to cross the thing. So in summer it's like they really have to go really far to cross the bridge or something.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's another talk. I think
was there a famous maths problem about the Danube bridges? Is that Euler?
Was it Danube bridges? The 6 bridges or 7 bridges thing?
Oh,
right?
it wasn't them. Okay.
Yeah, probably something else. Okay, yeah. Sorry. So I think we finished politics, we finished weather. Now we can get to the real topics. So Roman, welcome to the podcast. Can you give us some introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Roman.
Hello, Roman.
Nice to meet you all. Yeah, so I'm a front-end developer working with Clojure maybe last 4 years or 3 years or something commercially. Yeah. Right now I'm working for Pitch and doing front-end there. And basically
what is Pitch, Roman?
So Pitch is a Berlin-based startup.
Right.
They are coming from Wunderlist, the to-do app. So the Pitch is a new product of Wunderlist team. Yeah, we are doing presentation software for web and desktop. And so it's based in Clojure and ClojureScript web stack.
So even the desktop one is also in Clojure and ClojureScript.
Yeah, it's Electron.
Oh. Okay, interesting. So it's like a competitor to Prezi or something, or a bit competitor to Keynote probably, or
yeah, I would say.
Okay.
We still try to innovate somewhere, so we can be everything. Yeah.
So you have lots and lots of like. Are you the master of CSS transitions?
No, we have. I think Marvin is the master of the CSS transition. The other guy.
That strikes me as like the beauty of like the web presentation type stuff, with those animations that can drive the hardware on the web browser, the CSS stuff.
Yeah, you mean that? Yeah, sure. It's actually very nice to be able to use web stuff in presentations because you have already everything built by other people. You can just use it.
Right.
You don't need to implement everything. Just everything is already done for you.
Yeah. So what is the stack do you use? Of course, it's Clojure and ClojureScript, but any specific libraries or something?
I think it's pretty basic. So it's on the front end, it's reagent, reframe, spec. I don't know much about backend because I didn't work with it, but I don't think we have anything special there as well.
Yeah. But before coming to Clojure, or how did you end up writing Clojure stuff?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, moving on then.
It's like Jason Bourne's.
Like you've had a memory wipe, you know. Everything else before that, it was obviously
bullshit.
Dog shit. So I just remember the good stuff. Everything else is like reset.
Struck me immediately. Yeah.
You've only got durable, persistent data structures as of Clojure in your head.
Yeah, but I didn't have enough memory to keep the old version.
Or maybe you switch to like code channel. So there is a buffer of only like 2 languages, and one language. So that's it. Rest of the shit is like dropped. And who cares? Dropping buffer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the time I was working at a company, and we were doing the front end in React, and it was before the Redux came out. So the whole thing about like global immutable state was, let's say, unknown to the front end community. And somehow I've seen a couple of talks on ClojureScript probably on the internet. And in the same time, I found a blog post from some other guy. I think he's completely unknown in the community. But he was talking about the global state, like pure transformations and all of that stuff. I understood that it's kind of matches the ClojureScript. And I started reading a lot about it. Just tried it, and I've been trying it for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. And because like coming from JavaScript, it's super foreign in everything, like from all the sides. Yeah, but at some point, I decided to maybe find a job, and luckily I found a job even here in Ukraine on site. Because usually, like when you want to do Clojure, it's most likely somewhere not in your country.
Yeah. How is it possible? Like every person we talk to, they say it's not in our country. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
There must be somewhere, like some people living in the same country.
Yeah,
it's always on the other side.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that I didn't know about it, but when you want to work with Clojure, no one is actually asking you to be super professional about it. You just want to be passionate. I mean, you obviously need to be like a good engineer, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But given the size of the community, like no one expects you to be super good at Clojure. Just want to learn it.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, right? I think it's probably a long time ago. I think Paul Graham wrote this blurb paradox. Like, all these kind of languages are actually more interested in learning stuff and doing things. So that means you're learning a non-mainstream language. That means you're actually interested in programming. Not just for let me get a job at a huge corporation writing Java. I'm done. So I guess that's probably the like a litmus test or something. So my Python become pretty big these days. I think he was giving Python as an example back in the day. But it looks like Clojure will never become like Java. So you always have this nice advantage of people who are actually interested in this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you compare your experience doing front-end stuff before React and after React, and before ClojureScript and after ClojureScript?
Well, before React, I wasn't doing much, let's say, or like, as you say, complex applications, right? I was doing a little bit of Angular, but mostly it was pure JavaScript or some jQuery shit or something like that.
Yeah.
There was like jQuery mobile where people started doing web applications. Yeah. I I wouldn't say it was a pain given like the size of the projects that I've been working on, but obviously like more abstract UI stuff like React, like component system, the state model, it's much better, right?
Yeah.
It's less granular, let's say.
So right now you're working with a front-end heavy application essentially, right? It's extremely because it's more or less trying to perform like a native application.
Yeah, and especially like presentation software, it's basically the complexities on a client because it's highly interactive.
Yeah. So what are the challenges that you are that you have building this kind of stuff in ClojureScript and Electron?
I would say performance, but not. It's not related to Electron itself, but the characteristics of the ClojureScript, like persistent data structures, interpretation of the hiccup at runtime. Sometimes it's not expensive, but when you build a lot of stuff, it just adds up, and at some point you see that there is kind of obvious ways to optimize it, but sometimes it's just the baseline and you cannot do anything about it. But yeah.
So you mean Hiccup has hiccups?
What?
Hiccup has hiccups every now and then.
Yeah. Hiccup has burps now and again.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but in general, it's very nice to work with it because previously, when I switched to ClojureScript, I started with Ohm, but I get past it very fast because it was a little bit, I don't know, it's just too much code to write, and it seems like Clojure should be a little bit simpler than that. So I switched to RAM, the Nikita Prokopov project. Yeah, and RAM was nice, especially because it compiles Hiccup with macros. So you end up with just basically JavaScript code without any interpretation. Yeah, but then I tried Reagent, and it's really nice to have this ability to compose Hiccup at runtime, even though you pay the cost for interpretation. But sometimes it helps a lot to be able to do that. Yeah. But also you use functions. That is, I mean, then you don't really need this composability of components in React. I mean, if you use macros, you cannot compose that, right? But even in Reagent, because it's functions, some things are much nicer to do with it. Yeah.
So if you go back to this performance issue, Roman, how do you measure this performance? What kind of like do you have some browser tools or the Google Dev tools, or what do you do?
There is obviously performance panel in Chrome DevTools. So Chrome DevTools is basically the best debugger that we have. I don't know, like Firefox is more or less good, but they are trying to push other things that are not present in Chrome. But Chrome is very good at profiling JavaScript these days. So they have this performance panel, so you can have flame graphs. And also React DevTools has their own flame graph, which works specifically on component render times. So instead of showing every function separately, they're showing you how the components, how much time it takes to render them. And it's really helpful because you can see all the interactions that you had on a page and what was the consequence of this interaction when it's rendering the component interacting with DOM. And also React itself in development mode uses the Chrome DevTools API to basically mark the flame graphs with some additional metadata, so you can see not only the functions that are being called, but different stages of the life of the React component. Okay. So it's really a good deep dive into performance.
Because I mean, one of the arguments about React in general, and maybe the things on top of it, is that in theory you should set your screen, and then you should only render the differences. So the performance in general should be better or at least more predictable for React based apps than for like standard JavaScript apps. Would you say that plays out in reality in your applications?
Yeah, sure. Especially with stuff like Reframe, where you can subscribe only the parts of the UI to the parts of the state. It's true. It's true. There's a subscription stuff in Reframe is very good, especially that you can compose it in very different ways. It's very nice.
But do you use Reframe as well, or is it just a reagent?
No, it's a reagent with Reframe.
Okay. So the application architecture is driven by Reframe, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so you're also playing with porting REPL onto Android, right? Or did you?
Can we just stay on the Reframe for a second, mate?
Sure.
We've got a bit more time. Come on.
Yeah.
We need to dig a bit deeper here.
Yes.
We'll come to the interesting stuff later.
Yes. Let's start with the boring stuff first.
No. I like Reframe a lot, so I think it's quite interesting. I was wondering whether, for instance, whether you've got any mileage out of this Reframe 10x project, because that Reframe, I've used it myself fairly recently, and some bits were quite nice, but some bits I didn't really understand what was going on. So I was wondering if you've used it very much yourself.
Not much. We actually used it in Pitch, but I don't remember what was the reason, but we switched to our own kind of clone of Reframe 10x with reduced functionality. I don't remember what was the reason, and maybe it even was swapped before I joined. Yeah, but I was wondering if it's possible to watch subscriptions, all the Reframe subscriptions in Reframe 10x. If it's possible to do there now?
Yes, it is possible to do that, yes.
Oh, that's very nice, because I sometimes I needed a lot just to be able to list all the values, all the current values in subscriptions.
Yeah. And you can filter it as well, and so you can only watch certain subscriptions or certain, and you can watch like across time. So that's this epoch time model. So yeah, well, worth dredging out again. Maybe it could be good for you in terms of understanding what's going on.
Is it possible to use web workers or something like that? Because I'm still wondering how can you squeeze the maximum performance out of an Electron app? Because I did some iOS development, so that's basically in Objective-C. So there it's a bit different, right? It's like the performance graphs and everything that you see and how much time it is taking to re-render. But is it still possible to get like native level speeds using Reframe inside Electron, inside something?
I don't know. I don't think so, because of all the legacy stuff that lives in the browser.
Yeah.
There is some baseline that you cannot go past.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're running on a desktop, maybe you can configure the instance somehow, give it more memory, more CPU. I don't know, like force it to use the hardware instead of like software renderer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's the nice thing about CSS rendering, isn't it? Is that it does use the hardware, and so I mean that's pretty much as fast as native. But yeah, I mean you're right. I mean if it depends on what you're doing. I mean a lot of the React Native stuff or the React stuff in general should render just as fast, because it's doing a lot of intelligent. It's doing, there's a lot of the algorithm is quite clever in terms of how it only changes the small amount, and also because you're using these subscriptions, you're only capturing changes from each event, so the code is very light for managing that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but if it's if you're thinking in terms of like the most native stuff is games, and I don't think it's going to compete on that sort of stuff really. That's why we were talking, to Tim's Gardner, wasn't it, about native stuff for consoles and PCs. I mean, it's a different ballgame.
Yeah. I think there it's the performance is. I mean, there's a different benchmark of performance there. Probably.
Yeah. 60 frames a second, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably with
you
don't need it for most Reframe apps. It's not a measure that you need.
Yeah, I think in general, I think it's more geared towards like normal applications, like normal ones, which are you can online booking things or whatever, that kind of UI heavy, but still not. You don't need a lot of transitions. Because one thing that Roman, I'm curious about Pitch is because you need a lot of these things as well, right? I mean, it's not a traditional, okay, I have a form and then I'm going to fill in some stuff, and it's not like that.
Yeah.
So how is the compared to your other application that you're building, like, because pitch needs to be probably, or the application that you're working on requires a lot of these optimizations. So is there anything that comes to your mind that you try differently in ClojureScript to help with the performance?
I don't know. I would say the performance are good so far. Probably the main bottlenecks are somewhere where you need, I don't know, like measure stuff, measure the DOM, talk to DOM frequently. Yeah. This is usually going to slow down the rendering, the updates. Yeah. But in general, I would say it's really good, even though we already have a lot of stuff going on the screen.
Yeah. And how do you do the UI testing for this, by the way?
Sorry, what?
Sorry, go on. You said.
Yeah, I wanted to say that usually stuff is getting slower when you're just rendering more UI. Like instead of testing on one item, you like have 100 of them, and then you start seeing like how slow things are just adding up, and as a whole thing, it's much slower.
Yeah. And how do you do the UI testing? Is there some sort of an automated thing or any library that you use?
No, we use Spectron. It's a kind of I don't know, what is the traditional UI, like headless browser,
Phantom.js, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
like Selenium.
Okay.
Headless Chrome, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So I think Spectron is something like JavaScript Node.js wrapper for headless Chrome. So we don't do fancy stuff like running I don't know, reframe handlers on JVM, because it's just pure Clojure or something like that. So we don't spend too much time on testing everything, because at the end of the day, if user flow works, like if clicking buttons is doing what you intended to do, so that's fine. If there is some error in the console and it doesn't cause anything on the UI or in logic, it's okay.
Do you have to test across browsers though? Because that's the bane of every web developer, isn't it? It's like Internet Explorer. So what's the story there?
The Chrome engine, right? Internet Explorer is also moving to the Chrome.
Well, yeah, the Edge browser is, but there's still a lot of shit out there.
Yeah. But I think for you, probably it's not a problem, right, Roman? Because you just use.
Oh, but we try it in web as well. But yeah, I wouldn't say it as much. Like it's Firefox, Chrome. Yeah, we have a couple of bugs for Edge, but it's just too early to start working on them.
Okay.
You
know how it like backlog fills with those tickets.
Yeah. And how is the delivery? Is it like you have a build and you generate like platform specific binaries or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Files for every platform, so you have to have Windows CI.
Yeah. And the communication with the backend, so because there must be some compression or something, or because there is a bit of a heavy data, at least initially, application state. So how do you handle that one?
For now, it's a very simple. It's just how do we call it? Event polling. So sending requests.
So you don't use WebSockets or transit over WebSockets?
We would need to use it, but like sending separate HTTP requests is much easier.
But isn't that okay? Maybe I don't know about the product fully. I think you're still in a stealth mode, or at least for the product is not released. Yeah. Okay. But do you plan to have something like multiple people collaborating as well? Because that is something that Ray is also working on, or I think there are a lot of people who are trying these things.
Maybe, I don't know.
well, I mean, Apple do that for Keynote, don't they?
Yeah,
and Google do for
even on the web, by the way. Even on the web, they do the same sort of thing. So, because I remember a long time ago, I think in 2009 or 8 or something, there was a company called 260 North or 280 North. They built the online presentation software. in JavaScript. But for that one, they built something called Objective-J, which is basically port of Objective-C, and then it compiles to JavaScript. That was a fun thing to try out.
Is it like GWT for Objective-C?
No, it's more like ClojureScript actually. So you have Objective, not even ClojureScript, more like TypeScript essentially. At that time we have this multiple CoffeeScript and all that stuff. Back in the day.
CoffeeScript, by the way, is such a nice language, except of some things in the syntax. But yeah.
Very
nice.
So like CoffeeScript was Ruby for JavaScript, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And then we have the Objective-J was basically Objective-C for JavaScript. And they used software was like replicating entire Cocoa API in that one. Because I remember I was contributing to that one for NS-string functions or something a long time ago. It was I think there was this wave of porting all the desktop software into web.
Didn't Apple buy one of those companies in the end?
Yes, they did, and that's the reason why you see iCloud is built using Sprout Core.
That's it, Sprout Core.
Sprout Core was the library or the framework to build this.
Where are we going with this anyway?
Sorry?
I mean, Sprout Core turned into Ember.js.
Yes, exactly.
So
because one of the Sprout Core developers started Ember, and I don't know where Ember is. I think LinkedIn uses Ember heavily these days. I see them sponsoring the Ember conferences.
I think Ember is like Clojure in the world, but like Clojure in JavaScript community. It's there, it's good, but a little people know about it. But those who use it are really fond of it.
Can I come back to
here from the outside?
Can I come back to another like web question, which is always a kind of thing that people complain about with, well, not always, but okay, fuck it, I'll just say that some people complain. some people complain that like security, some people complain about web security. So I was wondering what you do with web, like cross-site scripting, CSRF, all this kind of like stuff that people talk about when you get into sort of web security. What do you do with that? Do you have like a package for it, or do you just make up your own stuff against the NIST guidelines, or you just ignore it because hey, we're a startup?
No, I think it's pretty basic. Like the things that others to have, we do that as well. So there is nothing like super interesting, I would say.
I think that security by not telling anybody what kind of security we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, don't mention it on a podcast. Whatever you do.
Is it something like one of your lawyers is listening to this one?
I don't do anything special.
So there are very clear guidelines on what to say.
Yeah.
So I think we have one standard question that we ask everybody, right? I think we discussed it on Twitter as well. So Emacs or some other shit?
Some other shit.
No.
No, I have Emacs. It's right in the center of my desktop, the icon.
So you aspire
it's literally shelfware.
So I open it once a month and like, okay, that's nice. I can evaluate stuff. How do I learn all of these key bindings?
You have to go to the process manager.
Let's get real work of cursive and start writing software.
So you have to go to the process manager to kill Emacs then.
No, I already get busted at this point.
Oh yeah, okay.
No, Emacs is
you're pretty much an expert at that point then. You're in the 1%,
I tried to write a little bit of common Lisp in Emacs, but then I was too lazy to set it up, so I just downloaded like pre-configured Emacs, which is just called Particle or something. So it basically has anything for common Lisp already installed, like Slime repo, all the environment, and it's really nice to work in.
Okay. But in general, you use IntelliJ or Cursive or?
Yeah, Cursive.
Okay, nice. So
it would be great to have an ability to script the IntelliJ, the Cursive, to like you do in Emacs, like you can configure it with custom scripts. So it would be nice to have this in Cursive. And
I think there is some meta programming system or something in IntelliJ core. It's called MPS, but that is more for the, I think, IDE developers or something. So I don't think you can have your own scriptable language or macro system or something that you can use. I'm not sure, because I remember Visual Studio has something like that. You could record the UI actions and then repeat them. That was a long time ago.
You can do that kind of thing in IntelliJ. You can definitely do visual macros. That's no problem.
Oh, I don't know, but
well, yeah, you can. It's that's no problem.
So you can record your actions and then replay them.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, because I know Visual Studio 5 had this already, so that's like one of the super advanced thing. Okay, I think maybe MPS. I don't know. Maybe, but it has Cursive is written in Kotlin probably, so maybe you can't plug into Cursive. Maybe. But these days Java has its own REPL, right? So maybe eventually you can get something.
What do you do? Actually, interesting, because I do a little bit of web stuff as well with IntelliJ, and I think the problem I've got in general is that if you're debugging stuff, you have to go to the Chrome tools to do that.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. They've got source mapping and that kind of stuff. Is that where you sit a lot of the time as well, in like the DevTools debugger? And
not much.
Oh, not much. No.
But Chrome has
the console where it says, and then you can work it out from there.
No, but printing stuff always works. You don't have to use the debugger.
Oh yeah. Cool.
It works.
But Chrome also has the source code editor, right? You can point to some files and try to edit some shit in that one. But probably it's not useful for Clojure, maybe.
But they have the source maps for Clojure.
No, not source maps. What you can do is in Chrome, you can actually open the HTML file in Chrome and edit it.
Oh, yeah.
Like there is a source, I can link to a folder and then say, okay, link to this one, and then I can see the structure and there is.
Yeah, but in ClojureScript's case, all of it's all generated, isn't it? So
exactly. Yeah.
Sure. The interesting thing is that, like, when you have a JavaScript code loaded, you can open it, as you said, in DevTools, but then you can edit it, hit save, and it will just reevaluate. So it's basically like hot reloading built into Chrome.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
So you also use Figwheel, probably.
Yeah.
To the hot reloading or whatever. The standard.
One other question for you as well, which I think is kind of fascinating with this reframe stuff, because I've struggled with it recently. So I'm just wondering if you've done anything similar. Do you use any like native, like stateful JS components with the reframe stuff?
Yeah.
So how? Because then you have to use like a different component model for reframe. How's that working out for you?
I'm not sure if we use any like stateful.
Well, I mean, thinking of like Google Maps or if you some things that are where it just with normal kind of React, the rendering is kind of direct because everything is stateless. But if you've got a stateful JS component, then you have to manage it more carefully yourself. Maybe you don't have any, and if you don't have any, you're lucky because they're a pain in the ass,
Yeah, I think I usually just make a wrapper component for it, which uses reframe subscriptions. Yeah. So the important part is that this JavaScript component would provide you the API to consume and provide values, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If it doesn't have this, like, it doesn't matter if it keeps the state inside. But the important thing is that it has the API.
Yeah, so you can route around it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's usually how it is, but sometimes there is those components that you cannot do anything about it.
Have you ever thought of, this is becoming, have you ever thought of thinking that, okay, I should do this in JavaScript?
Not yet, but sometimes I'm thinking that, yeah, maybe it would be nice. And it's actually very nice that you can just go, let's say, lower level, right?
So you can just include, okay, this part I'm just going to write in JavaScript, because maybe one of these things is like this component that is more JavaScript friendly rather than ClojureScript friendly or your model friendly. And then you drop down to JavaScript level and then just introduce that part there. It's like the foreign function interface or something.
Yes, I'm actually thinking about it. It's interesting that probably it's not very common to do in a Clojure or ClojureScript world, right? We tend to write everything in our language.
Yeah,
but
you consume a lot of JavaScript libraries, though, don't you? Typically, so whether you write them or you take them from third parties,
yeah, I mean, like while working on a code, you think perhaps something is slow or just interop is not nice. So maybe it would be nice to keep in mind that you can actually go and write a JavaScript module and just include it. That's it.
Talking of like those kind of things, do you use like the npm, like the what's it called, the shadow, the CLJS shadow stuff, or do you use the line plugins, or do you use the Figwheel or the Figwheel main now, or the deps? What are your kind of build tools?
Yeah, we use deps and Figwheel main. And I didn't know it, but it turns out that Figwheel main can also like compile stuff for production, and it has additional stuff that is already in Shadow CLJS as well. So including npm is a little bit easier now. It's very nice.
Excellent. Yeah, I must admit, from my perspective, I think the deps.eden stuff on ClojureScript is really, raising the bar a lot. I hear some people complaining about it. Maybe it's they're all on the Clojure side, but certainly from ClojureScript side, the deps.eden makes everything very, very nice to work with.
Yeah, personally for me, it's more like for someone who's coming from JavaScript. For me, deps.eden is more closer to JavaScript world. Something like package JSON stuff, webpack config.js. So it's just not that huge project.clg with deps and everything in one file.
Yeah, so and then you have the CLJS build, which seems like a weird tool as well,
Yeah.
But do you use lining in or boot, or which one?
No.
Do you use?
So it's just Figwheel main with deps.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all the rage now, VJ, with the kids,
I'm not into the front end world. Maybe I will get into it eventually, but I fucking gave up on this shit long time ago. Because I think I built a pretty complex one using Backbone. That was the first thing, and also EXTJS and Dojo and other shit as well. I think Backbone was fun, but with CoffeeScript especially, because the same guy who is building Backbone with CoffeeScript was pretty nice. But I didn't get too much into ClojureScript because mostly I'm working with big data. Big is a relative term, but mostly working with data. So I think it's the JVM and backend stuff that is much more interesting for me. I think I'll wait until all the years we don't have like 70 different frameworks and some other shit in JavaScript constantly. So,
but it does seem like that now. I mean, don't you think like the React Native is basically one?
I'm not really.
React
Native. No, I mean React. Yeah, I think it's converging, right? But the thing is that it's a similar wave that happened with Angular, and everybody wanted to do Angular applications because, and then I saw like, what the fuck? This is basically Spring in JavaScript. Like, okay, interesting, I guess. And then React came in. I think React is a pretty nice thing. I think it's converging towards React. Everybody wants to build just React applications. So that's pretty cool. But for the front end, I think I'm still kind of old school because I'm convinced that I should, if I'm going to build something on the desktop, I would go for the native language for some reason. I'm not sure why. I feel I should do it in Swift. Like that is the.
I think the problem though is that it's okay if you're making a hobby project, but if you're trying to make something like for the phones and for the desktop and for the web, then having all those languages, you've really got to work out that there is a big payback for actually dropping down into each of those languages rather than using a framework like ClojureScript to get the benefit across all of them, because the investment you're going to make is pretty huge to maintain all of those projects in a kind of like nice visual, to have a common visual experience and all that kind of stuff across platform. It's going to be hellish, really. So you have to have a really good argument for it. But I guess is your point, Roman, your company's point. That's why they're using the Clojure and ClojureScript stack, because they can get the benefit across all of the devices.
Yeah, exactly. Like, time to market is immediate. You reach to every platform, including web. So that is good.
Yeah, I mean that's what we see in Slack or all the new chat applications essentially using this platform, and then taking I don't know the fuck like 800 gigabytes of memory just to run this shit. It's mental.
Yeah, well, that's the bad part of it for sure.
Yeah, because I saw some open source, not open source, but there is a project. There is a person who is building cross-platform chat applications, but in C or C++. Sorry, not in C or C++, but a language called V. So he's building his own language, and then he's building like a chat applications very native. So it's like super tiny binary, and it doesn't take this much of memory, and it talks to Slack, it talks to IRC and all the stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe we need a different runtime. I think it's as you're pointing out, Roman. I mean, there is the baseline of Electron application is the 20 years of fucking browser shit that it needs to render.
I dream that we are going to have a switch in the browser where you can just switch off all the legacy stuff. And just...
So maybe there is some sort of a build tool that can do the tree shaking or something from the code and remove all this crap, and then you build like tiny Chrome.
Yeah, there are a couple of projects I've seen that are like the port of the WebKit for embedded devices, and it's like super tiny. I think even PS4 is using WebKit. Like it's the small version of it. The UI is rendered in WebGL or something.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. But that gives us a nice.
To be honest, I don't think there should be a particular problem with that for especially for Electron apps. I mean, that looks like, because you're shipping the code. I mean, standard web browsers are a bit different because they're expected to support code from everywhere. So fair enough. But
you can environment you can do
with Electron apps, you can do that.
I agree.
So talking about native stuff, maybe before we go to native things, so what is the application that you're building for Android? Replete or REPL on Android?
Yeah, so it's the Mike Fikes built the original application for iOS, I believe in 2015 or something. Yeah, so it's basically an iOS application with embedded JavaScript core engine, which is in Safari browser, and it runs the self-hosted ClojureScript.
Yeah.
So and I was using it a lot until I broke my iPhone and
Android.
Android. So I was interested in what it would take to build such an application for Android and also practice a little bit mobile stuff. And turned out to be a very nice experience, especially for a web developer who is like spoiled with dynamic languages, hot code reloading and everything. It's still really good. You can have sort of hot reloading for Android because if you change only view logic, it auto reloads the view instead of recompiling the whole application. It's nice, and also Kotlin, and it feels good.
Yeah. But is this available on the Play Store now that you publish it already?
Yeah, it's already beta. You can go to Play Store, search Replete, and join the beta program and start it and try. So instead of JavaScript core on Android, it runs V8 just because it was much easier. There is already a library with Java bindings, and you can use it directly from Kotlin. The interop between Kotlin and Java is super seamless. You don't have to do it. It's very.
But I understand that JavaScript code does run on Android, though.
Yeah, you can do that. But I mean, I didn't want to spend time on writing bindings.
No, sure.
Yeah.
But it's what React Native uses, isn't it?
Yeah, they also use JavaScript core because apparently it's much faster. Yeah. And I believe even the performance test of ClojureScript show that JavaScript core is much better at executing compiled ClojureScript than V8. Yeah,
which is weird to me. Yeah.
Did you know that in the latest chips on mobile, Apple included JavaScript tailored instructions for working with floating point numbers? So they
I didn't know that. No.
Of the floating point number on the CPU, there is a set of new instructions. And that's why new iPhones are like 4 times faster than iMac Pro or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. So they've actually put the JavaScript on the metal. Wow. I guess when you can design your own chips, you have that option. Yeah.
That probably means a lot for React Native as well, right?
Yeah.
But how do you handle all the NPM bullshit, like all the the bazillion libraries and all these things?
I don't know. I don't use it much.
That is one way of using it. Makes sense, I think.
Like in those 4 or something years that I use ClojureScript, nothing is changed. Like React is the same, everything is the same.
Yeah.
But at the same time, NPM ecosystem grows, and especially React ecosystem grows, and you get more and more very nice like UI primitives that you can start using without rebuilding everything yourself. So it's just consuming the modules.
Yeah. That's a nice segue into, I think, the UI. What do you mean by UI primitives? Like web components or something?
No,
like that?
I mean some, like, let's say more or less stateless components that, for example, like tables, buttons, I don't know, sliders. Like if you want to build a custom select on a web today, it's madness. If you want to handle all of the focus, keyboard stuff, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So
it's very nice to be able to use that.
But you're also experimenting with building something for a native like that, right? UI components, or did I understand wrong?
Yeah, so I was wondering, because I was working with React Native a couple of years ago. I really liked the model that you basically provide bindings for native UI controls into JavaScript environment. And I was wondering, why is no one doing this for desktop? Because Electron right now is basically what PhoneGap was before React Native. It's just a web mover up into full screen container, right? And no one seem to be interested in that for desktop. I don't know. Maybe it's not much demand on the market for that. I don't know. But
so can you give us a bit of background, like what exactly the problem that you think that needs to be solved for this one? Like what does library do?
There are a lot of different toolkits already for native UI. Like the most popular probably is GTK, right?
Yeah, or Qt or GTK, yeah.
It would be very nice to have a dynamic environment where you can execute JavaScript or whatever dynamic language and have the native like hardware graphics speed.
Yeah. So
it would be very cool.
So you're talking about like this notion of being able to use like with the iPhone or the Android, where you've got like the native web, the native toolkits. So they've already got all of the bits and pieces, or you can write all the bits and pieces in like your native language, like Swift or Java or Kotlin or whatever. And you're saying you'd like to be able to do that for like some Electron app. So if you could have like a GTK control or something like that, which was super fast, like a super smooth scroller or something like that, or a window resizer, or I don't know what's kind of slow on Electron, really. Probably everything, but
yeah.
But if there's one specific thing with the scrolling or with the scaling or whatever, you'd like to be able to just get a native version of that and integrate it, but it's hard at the moment. Is that the problem?
No, it would be nice. I didn't think about it, but it would be nice if you could, like on Electron, if you could provide native controls. But I was thinking more of a way that is Flutter, Google's Flutter is doing.
Oh, yeah.
They provide you basically a canvas to draw anything. So instead of using native controls, which look different on every platform, it would be nice to have this like dynamic environment, which provides you bindings to OpenGL, and you can just draw anything that you want. Of course, it would require to re-implement like the events model, the scrolling, everything basically.
Yeah, I mean that's the essential problem, isn't it, with the canvas and that whole thing? It's just a reinvention of the web.
Yeah, that's true.
But it will go fast though, that's for sure.
Yeah. But isn't it something because there should be something using SVG on the web for these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Like you can use SVG to build these components, so to speak, but there is a behavior that you need to attach to those things. I mean, there could be something like that, I think. But on native, I have no idea. So if you're using OpenGL, then or something to draw, you need a surface to draw on, some graphics context probably.
Yeah.
So you're working on bringing JavaScript into this, or where is the dynamic thing coming from?
Yeah, it's more like experiment. So I was thinking about it a lot, and then I saw this project in OCaml in Reason. So they basically do the same, but they compile to native binary and compile to WebAssembly for web. But it's really good that they do it for the native binary for desktop.
Yeah.
But compiling everything to WebAssembly for browser means that they run UI on a WebGL, then you don't have, I don't know, like accessibility, basic stuff.
Yeah.
For desktop as well, you have to use accessibility frameworks on every OS if you want to make your interface accessible. If you draw anything on GL, it's just a canvas with only visual stuff. Yeah. So I was thinking it would be really nice that you can actually use React ecosystem. So React has this ability to write your own custom reconciler. They extract it in recent versions. They extract it into a separate package. It's called just React Reconciler. And the reconciler is basically a function that emits a set of command for two different UI trees. So when it did diff, it converts it into like 5 or 6 commands, like create, delete node, create, change attribute, delete attribute. And you can apply it to any target that you want. You can reconcile like the UI on OpenGL, or just maybe even talk to server. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is very for everything.
Did you have like a what state you are in when you're still experimenting with it, right? I mean, is there something that you already?
I'm mostly experimenting. So I was thinking about like run Node.js instance or write a little bit of interop code as a native add-on for Node.js, like provide bindings for window controls, for scrolling, for events, and OpenGL. And the nice thing is that, for example, OpenGL maps one-to-one with WebGL, because basically Web is OpenGL for the web. So it was very easy to bind OpenGL to WebGL, and then you can run every like JavaScript library for 3D, like 3JS, and have 3D stuff very, very fast.
Sounds pretty interesting. So I think we'll keep following you. I think once you have the probably a demo or something, that'll be super cool to take a look.
No pressure. But make it awesome.
Yeah, I think in a couple of weeks, if we can get the demo, that'll be super nice. So I think we are. Oh wow, almost 1 hour. Nice. So I was just talking to you before we started recording. You're there at Clojure D, right? I mean, any impressions from Clojure D? I was there too, but I think it's better to hear from you.
Yeah, it was a nice conference.
Yeah.
Of nice talks. I think the favorite talk for me was the German guy about list theory. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very nice to. I like that he was talking about like the local stuff that was going on in Germany, not the entire world. So you learn a little bit of Lisp history in Germany.
Yeah, that's true. I think that was like really interesting talk. I think the like West Germany and then East Germany, and there is a Lisp, movement everywhere, and that was super fun. I think one of the
Yeah,
best things was the whole compilation was essentially taking your punch cards and going by S-Bahn and then actually going to the machine and putting the punch cards in. That was super fun to hear. Like how much we have changed in just 20, 30 years. It's crazy. Yeah. And I really like the talk by Paulus Esterhazy, or I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's also from Pitch. The philosophy of combining things, composition, and that one was pretty nice.
yeah, it was very abstract talk.
But it was a very nice conference. I mean, I was there. I think it did because it's a two-track thing. There is this missing out on some other tracks. Like missing out on some other talks in another one. It was fun. But it was pretty nice of Ingo and the organizers to invite us on the stage as well. So I was able to talk about DCD for 5 minutes, and I met a lot of people from Heart of Closure as well. Arne running out of Heart of Closure. So I think we're getting there are dozens of us.
Yeah, that's really nice to be like in a room with a lot of people who are interested in the same stuff that you do.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's
what I like about closure conferences is that they are not feeling like a festival, like 1,000 people, super expensive, or something where you don't know anyone. Like
yeah, I think if you go to like Java World or something, one of those things, they're just like probably like a village or something, like I mean not a Russian village, but probably an Indian village, like huge amount of people, and you're just one of those persons, and a lot of exhibitors, etc. But it's still really cozy and a nice environment.
Yeah.
So, any other topics that we want to cover?
I don't know.
Okay, so we'll wait for your native toolkit in a couple of weeks. So I think maybe 1st April or so. No pressure again. But just to give a quick update on because we're talking about conferences, and so Dutch Closure Day is going to happen on 6th of April. We just published most of the talks. I think there is still one talk that we need to pick. It's been a big challenge for the program committee to pick the 7 talks out of 42. They're so amazing. Like all the proposals are so awesome. We were actually thinking, shit, next year we really want to have like, 2-day conference. Because
that would be good. Yeah.
Because we really want to have all these talks, and it was so difficult to pick what we want to have. But I think we have a very nice combination of talks, both beginner and tooling and real world and a bit of things. So it's going to be fun. We are planning a couple of fun activities as well. I think more once we send an email out for all the attendees, it'll be I think more out in the public. But we are looking forward to the conference. And of course, there is a big shout out. I want to give a big shout out to Heart of Closure that is going to happen in August. I think the CFP is still open. So
I think they closed it actually.
No, I think they extended.
They just extended it.
Yeah, I bet. I need to look it up. And also Closure Tray as well, and Enclosure. So all these people on the stage on Closure D. So we are essentially trying to work together to make sure that we give like a different flavors of conference for catering it to everybody in Closure community. So I hope I'll see some of you at Dutch Closure Day, or probably Heart of Closure maybe in Belgium, and Closure Tray is in Helsinki somewhere in September, I guess. We'll put the links on the thing. So that's it from us. Ray, do you have any list of people that you want to give a shout out to?
I'm not very well organized today, I'm afraid.
So we thank everybody.
Yeah. Actually, Roman is buying his way onto the show, in fact. So if any of the Patreons do want to shout up and join onto the show.
Yeah, exactly. You just give us $1, we'll put you on the show. That's super easy.
Yeah.
Bribe us, please.
So that's the one I don't have to remember, but I do remember that he's on the list. So obviously giving you a shout out before, but we can give you a special one today as well. So thank you for your money and thank you for your ideas. It's both are welcome.
I think we are the first podcast ever that the listeners are the people who are the guests. Like basically.
Yeah, exactly.
One, and they're also the people who pay to be on the podcast or help us out to run the cost or something. That's a healthy ecosystem. Well, anyway, thanks a lot for your support. I think we will put the money to good use, and it's helping us in covering the costs as well.
Yeah.
And that's it from us today.
Thank you very much, Roman. That was really good fun, and I think everyone should check out the beta version of Replete on Android. Because it's doing good work there. I think getting the reach of Clojure and ClojureScript across more platforms is solid work. So really well done. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you for
inviting me. And for all the lovely money.
Yes. Okay, that's it. Goodbye. And we'll see you in a week.